This is our bivariate presentation on the justifiability of the violation of human rights in the name of security and stability. Our research question is, what disposes Palestinians towards giving up human rights for security and stability? For this question, we will be using the Arab Barometer dataset, choosing the respondents that are specifically from the country of Palestine, with a sample size of 1,270 respondents. We have constructed 3 indexes for our independent variables and determined that they are reliable. Our indexes are comprised of measures for the following independent variables: the extent of respondents' religiosity, the extent of their trust in institutions, and the extent of their access to civil liberties. These indexes were analyzed using analysis of variance and cross-tabulation. Scholars have studied the relationships we examine. Human rights violations and religiosity is explored by James Clark's paper. Clark presents multiple theories by various scholars on religiosity's influence on ethical judgments. In addition, DeVos and his colleagues analyze the relationship between human values and trust in political institutions. In another article, Park discusses the aspects of human rights in regards to civil liberties of individuals who live in developed and developing countries. The dependent measure for our study is asked by the question, to what degree would you agree that the violation of human rights in Palestine is justifiable in the name of promoting security and stability? High levels of justifiability were indicated by a score of 4 and low levels of justifiability were indicated by a score of 1. There were no available items in our dataset that could be compiled to an index for our study. Our first hypothesis is that higher the level of the respondent's religiosity, the more likely they are to justify the violation of human rights for security and stability. Our independent variable for religiosity is a measure of how religious respondents are. Our index was comprised of 3 indicators. After testing for reliability, these indicators resulted in an acceptable alpha score of 0.6435. Higher levels of religiosity were indicated by a score of 3, and low levels of religiosity were indicated by a score of 1. Our second hypothesis is that the more trust the respondent has in political institutions, the more likely they are to justify the violation of human rights for security and stability. This independent variable measured the respondent's trust in political institutions. This index was also comprised of 4 indicators. After testing for reliability, these indicators resulted in a high alpha score of 0.7173. High levels of trust in political institutions were indicated by a score of 4, and low levels were indicated by a score of 1. Our third hypothesis is that the greater access to civil liberties the respondent believes to have, the more likely they were to justify the violation of human rights for security and stability. This independent variable measured the respondent's access to civil liberties and was comprised of an index of 4 indicators. After testing for reliability, these indicators resulted in an acceptable alpha score of 0.644. High level of access to civil liberties were indicated by a score of 3, and low level of access to civil liberties were indicated by a score of 1. Our results indicated that the low religiosity group was least exposed to human rights violations. Medium was most exposed. High had scores that were more similar to the low group than the medium group. Kendall's tau was very low, indicating a weak relationship. The chi-square p-values were high, although not reaching significance at the 0.05 level. We ran ANOVA, which showed that the 95% confidence interval for low and medium does not overlap. This indicated the 2 groups were different with respect to human rights violations. This suggests that people with low and high religiosity are less disposed towards justifying human rights violations than people with medium religiosity. The results for our second hypothesis indicated inconclusive results yet again. Weak Kendall's tau showing a weak relationship and a higher p-value associated with chi-square. Although results were not statistically significant, it seems that people with low and very low trust in institutions are less disposed to justifying human rights violations. The results for our third hypothesis indicated that there was no difference among groups. It was statistically significant as p equals insignificant as p equals 0.9. Our hypothesis probably disproved. Access to civil liberties has no impact on justifiability of human rights violations. Our findings were mostly inconclusive, either showing no difference among the groups or statistically insignificant differences. Our first hypothesis that religious people would be more likely to support human rights violations was not supported. However, ANOVA and the crosstab indicated that Palestinians with low religiosity are least likely to accept violation of human rights. Those who are highly religious are as unlikely to support them too. Our second hypothesis that people with higher trust in institutions would be more likely to accept human rights violations was also not supported, though there was a slight indication that low and very low trust in institutions led to less acceptance of human rights violations. Our third hypothesis was probably disproved, though we cannot be sure because we only used one set of survey data. Future research would be more conclusive if more variables measuring the same concept were available so that we could make an index from our dependent variable. Furthermore, this survey was quite broad so that it would be useful to use one that is specifically designed to measure attributes of human rights. Our study was definitely limited by this lack of useful, coherent information gathered for our purposes. This certainly was part of the reason we found such inconclusive results. Because religiosity showed such extremes, no gradual trend from low to high, it would be interesting to look at different factors of what makes people religious. Park also suggests that the factors of human rights may correlate with one another, so crossing the independent variables might have also yielded interesting results as well.